So this is our final webinar. So I'm not spend much time talking about the course sort of stuff. Um, and I just want to talk a bit more about building a bit of a plan. And Damien, I know you've already got a plan, but we may be able to, I guess reflect on this and build some stuff into that plan. So, you know, that's all cool. You guys, rock stars. So finished you in the top five all the way. I think Damien's had the lead the whole way. Well done. But yeah, everybody else is a whole heap of people up there. There's quite a few people with sort of one module to go, that last module to go, which is good. Um, I guess MindShop Online, for you, Russell, the access for this MindShop Online will come down at the end of the month. So if anything because it's an ongoing cost for me to keep it up there. So if you anything you want, just download it, screenshot it, download it, get whatever you want from it. Between now and the end of the month, you're most welcome to jump in and do any other courses and other things you want to do. And if you want to continue access, just give me call. We can talk that through. It's a small cost. Yeah. But so just something to be mindful of. I guess the journal, I guess I keep rabbiting on about this, but I see this as a really important part of just finishing up and just keeping going with it. And it's something that I use all the time, and I know I've rabbited on about it, but it's really, really powerful. So the modules, I guess I won't stop and go through each of these. The personal brand is really important. I guess a quick question: did you manage to finish off the vision mapping piece? I think you would have, Russell, because you got your certificate through. So you're on mute, mate. Sorry.
Yeah, I've done most of it at the time, or right at the end of it on the last module.
Yeah, cool. So you must have done enough for the system to say, yeah, you've completed it. All right,
Yeah.
well, cool. And just finish it off, because I think the where is really important with this stuff. We talked about leadership styles. We talked about mindset, business acumen. I think is really important, and understanding yourself and others is a complete part of that. Locus of control. I think I've had more feedback on this module than just about anything else in the system. Everybody's come back and said, oh, it's opened up some doorways for them and a whole heap of other things, and that they've actually started to think differently about how they approach stuff, which is pretty cool. Emotional intelligence, it's worth reading the book. If not, just have a listen to those resources I put up where Google does a quick 15-minute podcast on it. Does a pretty good summary of it, actually. Culture, values, authenticity, we've got to link that together. The trust equation is another critical one, right? And it's all driven by this self-orientation piece here. How trustworthy are you? How much do people think you're in it for you or in it for the greater good? Really important. Being strategic, I find that's probably the thing where I spend more time with individual leaders when I work with them, is encourage them to think differently about a whole heap of stuff, and in larger organizations, you've got to be careful that somebody else is not writing checks for you to cash. You know what I mean? You haven't had any input into areas that you have direct responsibility for. Somebody else can come in and make some decisions for you. And unless you're actually starting to contribute to that discussion, I'm not saying you have to, be the one that creates the strategy or whatever, but you should be thinking about it and letting people know what's going on. Really important. Setting goals, KPIs, really important. I'll show you how to do that with AI in a little while. Effective change success model. This is just a checklist that I use when there's any major change project underway. I just get people to fill this out. The diagnostics there, it's a really good diagnostic for that. Let Justin in. Managing the team effectively, that's important. There's a whole heap of things to think about there. Delegation, feedback. Everybody wants feedback. Most people want accountability. Hey, Justin, how are you, mate? And then, in the modern workforce, we're starting to think about how we manage people that aren't in our office anymore. And somebody said to me the other day, oh, we don't really have any hybrid workers. And I said, oh, do you employ a bookkeeper? And they went, yeah. And I went, do they come into the office? No, they don't. So that's a hybrid worker. We often don't think of lots of people who provide services to us as part of our workforce, but they often are as contractors and other things. And that's changing very, very swiftly, I'm finding. The coaching matrix, this is one I said I keep in the back of my toolkit. It's in the back of my mind all the time when I'm talking to people and I'm trying to get them to actually, where we're talking about doing a task or doing a project or something. I've got to think about how much instruction do I need to give them, how much supervision do they require, or is it motivation that they're looking for, or can I just say, hey, go and do it, and that's where we go. And I've been coaching some people for like 20, 25 years. And we're up in this trust phase pretty much all the time with things. But every now and then, I've got a particular issue with a long-term client at the moment, and we're back here. We're back in the instruct phase. I'm giving quite detailed instructions on what we need to do, and even trying to a little bit of motivation for some of the other partners in that firm. So you've got to be thinking about that as a leader, I think. Tough decisions, decision making. Well, the decision matrix is excellent. I saw there's quite a good book called The Road Less Stupid by one of the gurus out of um, uh, let's see, I've gone blank on him, Warren Buffett's firm. And he was talking about an options ranking system and everything else. It was just the decision matrix, but it was interesting. He said, but you've got to be careful. Adding up the numbers doesn't work because there's different weights on these factors. He hadn't thought about putting in a weighting factor into it, which I thought was a bit interesting. So this model, I didn't develop it. My mind shop did is a great model for decisions. Do that. Intuition. I've had an issue this week that I've been working on, and I've used some intuition tools to help me just cut through the white noise for me to help me get a bit more focused on it. And it's not about predicting the future. It's not about all that mumbo jumbo. It's actually just about cutting through the noise and getting the focus. So whether you use a coin toss or I use like Ching, which is a simple, Chinese thing, but it doesn't matter what you use. It really doesn't. You can look at the horoscopes. It doesn't matter. But what it is about getting in touch with your intuition and your gut feel and your decision making. You'd be a far more powerful leader if you do. Delivering results, all about results. It's about how do we make sure that we do this realistic expectations. It's actually not hybrid workforce. I changed that slide in the previous presentation, so it's aligned workforce. But realistic expectations, smart goals, holding them accountable, and then that sort of aligned workforce are really important for getting results. Accountability's popped up a few times in this program. Right, the case study. I guess I was going to ask you what were your key takeaways from the case study, if you've done it, or you all have. You want to jump in, anybody? Just open up the microphones and we'll chat. Anything that you took away from that case study that you thought was important? Well, for me, the case study, I think it's about looking at it from different perspectives. So I often find that looking at a problem, we often come at it from one perspective and we only look at it from one perspective. I found that better thinking about this stuff is to look at it from multiple people's perspectives, try and put yourself in the shoes of other people and how do they approach in this problem and what we're going to do. So that was the thing I sort of took away from that is I don't think you can just look at these things from one perspective. Damon, you were going to say something, mate?
I was just going to say, yeah, very much in that. I think in the case study, I'm just trying to reflect the memory, but it was almost like there was one team player that was kind of being blamed or projects weren't working well just because he was involved in the team. But I think, when I was looking at, well, there could be a number of factors, you need to understand where he's coming from because it could be a totally different reason that's underpinning why that team's not performing rather than simply saying he's just here and every time he's involved, productivity drops off. There could be other factors that are part of that. I guess that's kind of on the back of what you were saying.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. And that lines up with, I guess, with other things, we've discussed along the way, but I often find if you're consistently saying something, I had a situation with a client the other day and they were consistently saying, my team don't care. And I just said to them, I don't believe that's the truth. And because if that was the case, you wouldn't have had these guys for 10 years or more. I think they care. There's something else going on for it. And so when we asked a different question, we got a different answer. We looked at it from their perspective as opposed from the business owner's perspective, and there was a different outcome from it. So, yeah, I think there. Anything you want to add, Russell, Justin?
Yeah, I thought using the tools first before sort of having a word to that team member
Yeah,
and sort of work out what questions you want to ask, then pull them aside, have an informal sort of meeting,
yeah,
and then actually get their read on it. So, like what Damien was saying, there could be other reasons, not just that. And it
yeah,
could be just they're clashing with someone, or it could be personal life, or it could be
yeah,
many things. And get that, and then sort of work if they're happy to, then work with a plan or upskilling, or even maybe moving to a different department if they're not sort of fitting in with that area. Maybe it's not where they want to be.
yeah, yeah. Good thoughts, Justin.
I haven't actually done the case study yet, but just last week I was just going through all the modules again, just looking to pull together a plan and make sure I was getting some good insights. Interestingly enough, been working with a client in the last week, and they had somebody they identified appeared to not be a fit and not working. And it turned out that there was a guy that was working with him that was even worse. So having got rid of the guy that was worse and then given the existing guy that looked like he wasn't working an opportunity to step up and do more, all of a sudden the motivation's completely changed. And we've got rid of the bad egg, and the one egg that looked like it was bad has actually turned into somebody that's really fired up and highly motivated. So,
Cool, nice.
so yeah, just to your point, Russ, from the turning that perspective around, it's made quite the change.
Yeah, good one. Thank you. I often find my experience has been if I've got somebody whose behavior changes, right? So if you've got somebody who's been a good employee or a good worker or whatever, good team member, whatever, and all of a sudden they're not for some reason, we often think, oh, whatever. I've got clients just go, let's just have a chat to them because something's changed in their basic, whatever. And it's often a personal problem or their family issue or a health issue or something that's just changed their thinking and everything else. And all of a sudden then they're not focused on work anymore. They've got other priorities and stuff. And so helping them address those has often helped those problems. And we brought back people who we thought were lost causes have now come back and we've helped them deal with those issues, and particularly in the current market where it's challenging to get good quality people. We just don't want to chuck them out quickly. So yeah, often if there's been a major change, I'll actually say, let's just have a chat and talk to them about it because that person hasn't acted like that in the past. All right, cool. All right, so I guess they're the modules. To complete all the modules and add your thoughts, comments, and feedback in the appropriate boxes, then you'll get a certificate of completion that'll be auto-generated for you, right? So it'll pop up and you'll get a thing. Now, maybe that's important to you, maybe it's not. But if you fill out all the boxes, then it auto completes for you. All right. So any questions or insights or anything you want to take out of not just last week's modules, but the course as a whole? Anything that's really stood out for you? Well, that's a small group.
Sorry. The whole course for me has been really good. Like just stepping into that leadership role and having those tools and that support through doing it, because this really is a support thing. Doing the mind shop and having a coach really does help. And then, having that cadence of the weekly check-in to make sure you're sort of on track. And it's not just, other courses that I've done have sort of just been, here's the information, you go away, do it at your own time.
Yeah.
And then life comes along and work gets busy and social life gets busy. And then you sort of, if you've got that check-in, it keeps you on track. So
yeah. I looked at the stats. We've got about 70 or 80% of people have completed nearly all the course so far, which is really good.
Yeah.
There are a group of people who signed up and then told me pretty much straight away they weren't going to be able to do it because of high heat pressure. So I've cut them out of those numbers. But which is I think is better than if I just let you all do this by yourself. Which is why I started. I thought we might do this. Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, I think Russ, what's been nice about this is having a group going through it at the same time and sharing some of the insights around it has been good. Keeping momentum on it as well, and then I found that having the PowerPoint and the review just made each thing a little bit, each of the segments a bit more valuable, and added, we could see your insights as well as the existing content that was sitting in there. And now the last piece for me is just going through and making sure I've got a nice clear plan as a result of all of that. And the other thing I suppose that's been interesting is that it seems to be, right now, this is a key issue for all of the clients that I'm dealing with. So it's been super timely, which has been really good from that perspective as well.
Nice. Cool. Damien, I saw you got anything to
I was
add?
just going to say something specifically. It just made me think. That whole coaching matrix piece about bringing along people in your organisation frees up your time, frees up delegation. But I think it sort of empowered me to sort of think about development plans for the staff, and like bringing them on the journey. And some of that is around them doing their own one-page plan.
Yeah.
And then providing them, the resources to how we get there. Just give them the vision map to say, well, I think you're a high performer, and I think you can get here.
Yeah.
This is how we do it, and this is how we want to help you grow, because then you can take pressure off us, and then we can get out and sell more and do more things. And
Yeah.
particularly with Lewis, as Russ. So therefore, it's just how do we bring him along? Because bring along really talented, smart people, but actually have a structured way to do so, rather than just saying doing a great job.
Yeah.
Actually making it measurable and having buy-in from them so that they actually feel empowered to do things.
Yeah, cool. And that works, right? That sort of semi-career planning sort of thing of, I want to help you develop and grow. People really buy into that as well, right? And It might be, I want you to go and do this course or do something else, and we'll help you, we'll support you in those sorts of roles or whatever. Yeah.
And by putting it on a one-page plan, it makes it just a document that's easy to digest. It's not too complicated, not too long, not something you just put in your drawer and forget about. So
Cool. Yeah, totally. So I'm going to step you through the one-page planning process, and also how to use AI to develop a really powerful plan, which I've been doing with clients as well. So before we do that, though, let's just quickly. So I might even, this will be a bit personal, so I might just press pause on the record. So pause the video, go off and do the exercise. When you're happy with what you've done, simply restart the video and we'll continue on with the program. And all right, so the next phase is about building your leadership plan and pulling all this together. And I'm going to step you through. There's a couple of ways to do it, and the first one is a manual way, right? This is a simple one-page plan that I use. That's part of Mindshop. If you go into one-page plan in Mindshop, it's all there. And I may give you different versions of this for you to use if you want to. But there's a couple of ways that we can populate this plan. And the first way is to do it manually, right? Where you just go through and you go, right, and sorry, just go back to the plan. So it's structured around, where are we now? Where do we want to be in the future? Are we got any measures for what we're going to do? What are our strategies? What are the actions relate to that strategy? Who's responsible? In most cases, that's probably you. And then what's the timing? When am I going to get it completed by? All right. So it's a simple framework just to pull together a plan. And this is the basis. I mean, I've got more complicated versions of this now, but probably for the first, I've been in Mindshop for 28 years. For the first 15 years, this is all I used, right? Probably only in the last 10 years or so that I've actually made them slightly more complicated. But the now, you want to understand where you are now as a leader. So review each module of the course, particularly things like leadership phases, your leadership style, mindset, acumen, locus of control, emotional intelligence, trust, those sorts of things. Complete some of the diagnostics, and I'll talk to you about what they might be in a minute. And then just make some notes on the key issues, right? So just go through, take the time to stop and prop and reflect on it, right? And go through and make some notes on those key issues. The diagnostics, you'll find all these on my website, and there's another one that I'd add in here. It's not on the website at the moment, but I'll make sure I add it in. And it's what I call is an end of year diagnostic, which is just that for you to stop and think about, really just reflect on the last 12 months and where you're at as a leader or as a manager in the business, or an owner or a manager in the business, and what are some of the issues. I find it's just a nice reflection point to stop and prop and reflect on, right? But there's a number of diagnostics here. You can do all of them. They're all free. They'll take about 5 minutes. The end of year one I just talked about will probably take you 20 minutes because it's a bit more thought, right? I find the diagnostics are just that really useful tool for you to get a quick snapshot around a particular area without going too deep, right? So use the diagnostics. The other things I put resources up for are behavioral assessment type things, and there's heaps of stuff around. There's free disc analysis. I use a tool called a Harrison assessment, which is quite a detailed analysis. It's probably a bit more expensive. It's about $800 a shot, so it's not exactly cheap, but it's really powerful. Justin uses that as well with his clients. And the other one is what they call positive intelligence, which is around how much it's around the saboteurs, that those voices in our head that, we talk about locus of control, those voices of locus of control telling us that, I'm not good enough, they're not good enough, this is not good enough, plus different saboteurs that drop in depending on our peccadillos. You'll find that that's a really useful tool to do. It's a free assessment, and it's really, really useful. So I'll put some of that in the resources. Just while we're talking about resources, I'm going to get my team to pull together a single web page that has all the resources from each session on it in one place, and you'll be able to go back to that over time. It'll be there as long as the website's up. All right. So once you've done the now, it's about thinking about where you want to be, and therefore, review your notes you've made, look at the modules, particularly things like leadership phases. Where did you say you wanted to be in that leadership phase? Your personal brand, your leadership vision map, your KPIs, OKRs. I think trust is important again, and then being strategic, right? And then just summarize the key points. So just do that quickly and easily, right? And you just want these to be simple summaries, right? And then we just get to the point and we go for the how. So I think developing strategies and actions is critical. And, I guess I find it easier if we just use standard sort of headings to help you organize your thoughts. Otherwise, you're starting with a blank sheet of paper, and it's really sometimes really hard to corral your thoughts. And, the ones I tend to use in leadership are, strategic, team, productivity, and life balance, right? So I tend to use those as four key headings. Strategic is, what are some of the strategic issues I need to be thinking about in my role, and probably in your personal life, but what are the bigger picture things I need to be thinking about and working on? How am I going to work better with my team? So what's some of the team changes I need to make? You guys have alluded to some of that. Personal productivity. I find it's really hard to be effective as a leader if you're not on top of your own personal productivity. And I can say from personal experience, I mean, I've more than done, halved the amount of time I spend at work for the same, or for more revenue, for double the revenue. I've just found that frees up so much headspace for me, that allows me to do so many more things for clients and everything else. So I'm not racing around doing stuff. So personal productivity, I think, is absolutely critical. And the last one's life balance, right? I always pull it out because I find it's the thing that struggles the most. And I ran a webinar last week on quarterly planning, and the little bonus section we did in that was, are you burning bright or burning out? And I've got a number of clients I think are on the slowly burning out at the moment. They're just a bit frazzled and around the edges, and and I think we just got to be mindful of that. Otherwise, our health really starts to suffer. So use those headings. I find the strategic SWOT tool, which you'll find in Mindshop, is excellent to helping you to summarize this stuff, right? So, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are the opportunities that are presenting themselves? And also, what are the threats? What's getting in the way? And one of those things could be, health or stress or something else if I don't manage that well, right? So plug those sorts of things in, and then the Mindshop tool gets you to brainstorm a heap of actions. And then what I do is group those actions under those four headings. So what do these actions relate to being strategic? Which of them relate to being team, productivity, life balance? And I just find that's a useful way to do them, and then add them to the plan. So that's the sort of way that I would populate that simple plan manually. Does that make sense? Any questions about how you go about that? And using that, I'm going to show you how to use AI to do it as well. But but sometimes I quite like the whole discipline of just sitting down and reviewing the stuff myself and going through it and coming up with my own stuff, writing stuff in my journal and developing stuff. Sometimes it's a bit too easy to plug it all into something like AI and have somebody else do the thinking for you. I think at times I would do both is probably where I would go with a lot of this stuff. I do this, the AI stuff's so quick to do. Anyway, so any questions before we move on? Cool. Well, let's just jump into this then. So, first thing about leveraging AI, and I've got a short video on just how to do some of this stuff, how to lock it down, how to make it write like you, so talk in your language, how to write good prompts, those sorts of things. I've got a little video on that. But use it as a sounding board, advisor, a coach, a consultant, but above all, don't trust it, right? So be really careful about trusting it too much. Make sure you're locking it down and anonymize any sensitive data, right? So I found that you can actually lock it down and it might have your first name in it, but it has nothing else in it. Some of the diagnostics will have your name in them, or some of the reports you'll get back might have your name in them. So I just leave it, so it might leave Russ or Russell in there, and I'm okay with that. But anything else, I try and either lock it down, I either take screenshots of things that don't include my name or anything else, or I'll use on Mac, I can just open it up in an app called Preview, and I believe there's something in Windows that does the same thing, and I can go through and it calls redact. It's got a redact function, so I can just go through and put black stripes through my names or people's names or whatever in that. So I use either of those, but I'm just concerned with AI that, like all these things, they can be hacked. And do you really want your data out there for the world to see? They say they're not using it, but don't really trust them all yet. So that's me and trust, right? The good thing about AI, it does 80% of the work, right? But you've still got to start it well and you've got to finish it well. And by finish it, you've got to, this don't trust it thing means you've got to check it, review it, make sure it's not telling you lies. Deloitte just got busted for a $440,000 report that AI wrote that fabricated all these things that didn't exist, books that people hadn't written, legal precedents, all sorts of stuff. It was pretty cool, actually. But you got to be careful around that. So just don't trust it. But remember, it does 80% of the heavy lifting in the middle, not all of it, right? And I think you've got to give it good instructions and you've got to check it, right? So let's talk about the instructions. And I'll give you this whole prompt at the end here. I can cut and paste it into the, I can't do it without, I'll do it before we go, but I'll cut and paste it into the chat for this, right? So about an 7-step process, right? And this is a process that I've used, and I'll show you how it plays out, right? But you want to give it some good data to work on, right? So take screenshots of your learning sprint module outputs, any diagnostic results, any behavioral profiles, any performance reviews, any previous plans you've got, all that sort of stuff, and anonymize them appropriately and save them somewhere, right? In a Mac, what I do, you use either Screenshot, which is an app, but in Windows, you can use the Windows key with Shift and S. Will give you a snippet tool, right? Allows you to just take a particular section of a page and save that as a screenshot. That's what I'd be doing. I think it's useful often to write a short paragraph on yourself. Something like, I'm a manager in an insurance brokerage with 3 direct reports. I report to the senior manager. I aspire to be a general manager in this firm. My key challenges are X, Y, Z, something like that. And then I just save that into a folder, which I call anonymous, actually. So I know it's been anonymized. So just get your information, put it all in one place so you're ready to go, right? Then we've got to give it a good prompt, right? So the perfect prompt formula, I've talked about this guy before. He's in that video that I said I'll send you. This guy, Jeff Sue, way too many Red Bulls, but he's excellent. And I sort of follow him on YouTube. I just find he's actually really good and really practical with lots of things. And the 6 things you need to think about with writing a good prompt. What do you want done? So that's the basic thing. And what do you want to get done? What's the action you want to take? The context. So give it some context around things if you can. give it an example if necessary. Here's a previous version what I've done. Here's another plan that I've done, all that sort of stuff. What perspective do you want it to come from? I find that's probably one of the more important things to give it is, you are, we'll show you in a minute, you are a leading leadership coach, or you are a great business designer, or I did one the other day for a client as a manufacturer. I said you're a leading resource planner and systems engineer, right? And it did a whole heap of cool stuff for us. So give it the persona you want. How do you want the data formatted to come back to you? And then what tone do you want to convey? So I have it set up now so it always writes like me, but you can put in there that you want it to do things. And I've done that for you in the next example. But writing a good prompt is the key to getting the most out of this. The other thing that what I've done, you'll notice, is I've cascaded the prompts. So I've set them up so that they are steps and they're all in the one prompt. But if you load them as steps and get it to stop in between, and I'll show you how that works out, it does a much better job because it doesn't have a really good memory. It remembers some stuff, but it'll forget really quickly what you've told it to do before. It's a bit like me, all right? So, yeah. So this is the prompt. So step one is, okay, you're a leading leadership coach. You'll be helping me, put your own name in there, Russ, create a personal leadership plan. You will present precise, concise responses using bullet points and professional, simple, concise language. Use UK spelling and grammar. All statements and strategies must be in the third person. So I like it to come back to me and it doesn't say, it comes back as Russ will do this. So it's all in the third person. Stop after each step for review. Ask for permission to proceed before prior to proceeding to the next step, right? So it stops and asks you and you can question it and now go to step 2, right? So the first step is data upload, right? The reason I put this in is because ChatGPT, which is my AI of choice, and I don't mind which one you use whichever one you like. They're all good. But it only allows me to upload 10 files at a time, right? So I want to put more data than that in, more screenshots than that in. I need to tell it to wait, otherwise it'll start the process without it. So that's all. So just check with me before you have all the data before we go. So that's the first step in this prompt, right? So step 2 then, I tell it, review all the information provided, provide a paragraph describing my tone, style, likely behaviours, confidence, emotional patterns and tendencies, provide a concise summary of my leadership strengths, challenges, and the key issues that I must address moving forward, right? So I want it to give me a summary or an analysis of what's gone on, right? So I get it to do that. I'll show you how that plays out. Then I say, right, based on the information provided for me, like my personal brand, vision map, and key measures, develop a simple summary of where I would like to be as a leader. Then write one short, clear sentence that describes the type of leader I want to become over the next 3 years. Suggested things, right? So the where we're going now, where, obviously, SWOT analysis, this I've said is optional, but it probably isn't. So we get it to build a SWOT analysis for you. We do that. Then we say the how, right? So once we've got all that, I want you to pull all this together for me, right? So review everything, review the simple statement of intent, and then I want you to come up with some strategies and actions. And there's a structure for putting that in. I make sure there's a life balance strategy in there as well, right? I'm always one for life balance. Is the only thing I force it to do. Everything else it can come up with by itself. Step 5, step 6, let's come up with some key measures for me. The metric, why it matters, and what the target is. So I get it to come up with some measures. It actually does a reasonable job on that sometimes. Step 6 again, step 7 again, but 6 is pulling it all together, right? So I've attached that one-page plan format, although in the example I did, I forgot to attach it. And give me the information I need to populate it. And then the last piece then is the cascading action plan. So using only the things from step 5, give them to me in this format and put a suggested timing on them. Whether I should do them in quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. All right. So I find that process is a bit useful. So let me show you how that plays out. All right. Can you see my ChatGPT? Cool. All right. So I've just loaded that prompt in. And then I've said to it, okay. And I've said it's for Frank, right? The mythical person, Frank. And I've just taken all I've given him is the end of year diagnostic, a life balance report, leadership phases, personal brand, and the positive intelligence stuff. I haven't done all the leadership courses and that sort of stuff in there, but you'll see what it comes up with even with that limited information, right? It says, ask me some questions, then it jumps into step 2. So tone and style. So Frank presents as blah, blah, blah. So it gives me that nice statement, which is good. What are his strengths? What are his challenges? What key issues he needs to address, right? And I go, and then you look here, he goes, would you like me to proceed to step 3? I go, yes. Way it goes. Where's Frank want to be as leader? He aspires to evolve, blah, 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 right? And it's just pulled all this out of it. I didn't put a paragraph in there explaining who Frank was. If you do that, it gives even more detail, all that sort of stuff. It's good. And then it comes up with this leadership statement. To grow into a leader combines calm authority and strategic clarity with the ability to empower others and sustain high performance. You might want to change the language. If you get it to give you much simpler language or whatever, it may not be as wordy as that, right? But as an example, it works reasonably well, right? The SWOT analysis, so it come up with strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, come up with the actions. How do you make the most of his strengths? What can you do to improve his weak spots? Blah, blah, blah. And then I said to it, righto, pull together a plan for me, right? So here's the strategy. Focus on building this. That's the description of the strategy, what the actions are that do that, delegate ownership, all that sort of stuff, right? So it comes up with a plan, key measures, comes up with some key measures, why it matters, all that sort of stuff. And then it pulls it together. Here's the now, here's the where, here's the key measures, and then here's the cascading annual plan. Right. Then it also said to me, it didn't ask if this at all, would you like me to prepare a formatted one-page plan version of it? And it came up with that. And then I thought, okay, that's all right. And remembering I've forgotten to give it the one-page template, so it doesn't have that. That was my fault. So I would upload that at the front, and then I got it. I said, yeah, create a PDF version of me for me, and that's what the PDF version looks like. Right. So it plugs all this stuff in reasonably well. So a nice, concise summary of your plan. Okay. So that's all with one prompt. I timed it. I had all the data anonymized, so I didn't include that. But just uploading it and getting it in took about 4 minutes, a bit over 4 minutes to do that whole piece of work. Yeah. So I would think that would take you hours normally to go through that in some sort of detail. Yeah. But if we go back here, the next step then is that's a draft plan, a very draft plan. Remember I said we can't trust it. So take the time to review it to see if it makes sense. If it doesn't, then request, ChatGPT to make changes and rework the plan until you're happy. So often I'll come up with stuff and I go, no, I don't want to do that. You'll notice in some of the prompts it says role plays are not appropriate for leadership, for leaders that we're developing plans for and stuff. That's come out of me using this quite a lot, and it used to always come up with a role play. Role play this scenario with these people and stuff, and I don't have any clients that really want to role play stuff. So I've made sure it doesn't do the role playing thing. So some of the stuff is it comes up with good stuff, some of it's rubbish, right? Then upload the plan to your template, print it out, stick it on the wall. Yeah. So I've got a number of clients who've printed out. We've got their business plans stuck on the wall here behind their computer, where it's something where they look at or they see regularly, or it's somewhere close. I also make sure it's available on all my devices. So I'll put my plan, PDF or whatever it is, I'll put it into something like OneNote, which I have on my laptop, my tablet, my phone, wherever I go. If I want to, I can pull my plan up and look at it. So it's not like it's in the office. The other thing I do is I'll often print when I had a journal, I would print them out. I won't get it out, but if I had a paper journal, I would actually print it out and sticky tape it into the paper journal. A4 fits, you just got to trim it slightly and it drops in there. So I'd always take it with me. All right. So just make sure it's with you wherever you go, I think is the thing, and whatever tools that you're happening to use. All right. So any questions about the AI component? It doesn't matter, manual or AI, any questions about how you use that and might leverage that, and what some of the challenges might be for you in doing that?
I think the prompt you've used is great, but I didn't realise prompts could get that technical. So it's
Yeah,
yep.
yeah. I didn't either, and I asked ChatGPT to help me improve the process for a long prompt that wasn't working, and it said we need to break it up into steps. And if
Yeah.
you break it up into steps, I'll remember it, and it does it extremely well. So I can't, so sometimes you got to ask it, if I'm getting inconsistent results out of it, I'll say to it, help me rewrite the prompt so I get far more consistent results from you. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'll rewrite the prompt, and then I'll save those prompts. So, you and I talked earlier about the prompt libraries. I store prompts that work for me in OneNote or Evernote or whatever you use. Could be a Word document. Doesn't really matter. But I just store them there, and then I cut and paste them and drop them back in when I want to use them and modify them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you do that, you'll find you'll get a really useful plan. So, um, you know, Damien and I work closely together. Damien, that's the process that I use. I've modified it slightly because my process is a bit different to that. But that's the process I use to come up with the first draft of that Damien plan. Yeah, and you can probably see some of that in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But then I take the time to go through it and edit it and change it, and because the first draft, it uses language that's not quite right, doesn't understand the context, it doesn't know Damien or Justin like I know them, so therefore it gets it wrong. Yeah. So you got to change some of it, or it's got crazy language, or it's getting you to do stuff that nobody's going to do. Yeah, so it's good in theory, but doesn't work in practice, sort of stuff. So yeah, but a really powerful tool that I think can save you a lot of time and a lot of energy. Um, and it does that 80% of the heavy lifting. So even if by the time you anonymize your data and upload it, even if it took you 20 minutes, it's probably going to still save you an hour or two, maybe more, and probably do a better job in some ways. I find it's really good at analyzing all that stuff. But, you know, I think this request I had to make the changes and keep reworking it until you're happy is probably the most important step in the process. Yeah. Because you can just say to it, I don't like that strategy. Give me another option. That doesn't seem to make sense. Where have you got that from? Why have you decided that's important strategy for me? I question it like that, and I'll come back and go, oh, because of this one. I go, okay, so you've got it slightly wrong, and give it the right information, and say now rework the plan, and I'll rework the whole lot for you.
And then once you've done that, do you continue it, or do you just like scrap that chat? Not scrap it, just file that chat and then sort of just start a whole new prompt with the same original information and see if it gives you something better and clearer? Or do you just continue?
I just keep on in the same chat because it learns from repetition from you a bit. So I find you don't have to reload everything again, and stuff. And if you just say to it, hey, that's not quite right, or go, okay, that's a great point. Thank you. What would you like me to do with it? You know what I mean? And so I find it actually learns and builds on the work it's done before. So I wouldn't start again all the time unless it's got it horribly wrong. That just means the prompt's horribly wrong. You're asking to do stuff that you don't really want. Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't often do that, but I'll set up in ChatGPT. I'll set up a project, and for every new client plan I do, I set up a separate chat for that. So I'm not using somebody else's information in that, but I'll just cut and paste the chat into a new chat in the project. Yeah, yeah. But I'm not saying I don't keep rolling. But if I want to go back and say rework Damien's plan or Frank's plan, I would go back into that chat and go, okay, we're now 6 months on. Damien's done these things. We've ticked off these things. What changes would you suggest we make to it? And I just use it as a sounding board for all this sort of stuff. And I normally do my own thinking beforehand. I've got to be honest. I'll have a pretty good idea of what we need, what changes I think we need to make. But I just use it as a sounding board, to help me sort of think through this stuff at a deeper level. Yeah, yeah. It's a good tool, powerful tool, right?
I think it highlights the little things that you miss out on. So like you have that thought of everything, and then you just like didn't think of that thing, like, or, then you can expand on it.
So, I mean, I was saying that Justin and I use the Harrison behavioural assessment. I found it does a better job of analysing that and pulling the key points out than I do. Yeah. I've done the analysis and I've gone, okay, that's good. So I get 80% of it, but it gets that extra 20%. And it actually links things that I don't even understand. Sometimes I go, oh, that's clever, like really clever.
Okay.
So it understands it. I don't like to use that word because it doesn't. It's just a machine, right? But it comprehends it or reasons it. The reasoning models in it now are so powerful. Yeah. And, I use ChatGPT as a model only because I think it's had more money poured into it than anything else. But I've been using it for the last 2 years and it now understands me and I've got it working the way I want it to work. You know what I mean? I've got it set up for me and it works really well. I find they keep leapfrogging each other, but I really jump around and try other tools for different things. But I think you're going to find there's going to be more specialized ones. I want to do some stuff around videos, take long videos and then carve them up into shorter things. I think there's AI tools that I'll use for that. ChatGPT won't do that, but I'm not going to use Perplexity for one thing and ChatGPT for something very similar. It'll have to be a very distinct custom process for me to use another one now. But it doesn't matter, I think, whether you're using, Copilot, ChatGPT, whatever it is, Claude. I don't think it matters. I really don't. They're all good. They'll all get better. Yeah. Yeah. So I just think that's a useful process to work through. I'll make sure I cut that into the chat before we go, so at least you can take a copy of it quickly. Okay. Any questions? Any more questions? Justin, Damien, and how we leverage it. Cool. All right. All right then. So, what are you going to do next? Are you going to develop your plan manually or use AI?
I've started doing mine manually already.
Yeah.
I sometimes have found in the past, and sort of interested to hear how you sort of keep telling ChatGPT to help you do with the prompt. But I've sometimes found when I've stuck stuff into ChatGPT, what comes back just takes me longer to work my way through and decide to include or exclude.
Yeah.
I think there's a part of my brain that once it's on paper, I don't want to take it off. So I sometimes find doing it manually is kind of better. Manually go through a lot bloody slower.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes I find that works a bit better for me.
Yeah, good. And sometimes, Justin, I'll do it manually. I'll write out a quick one-page plan in my journal, take a photo of it, and upload that into
Okay.
ChatGPT and go, here's the prompts. I've also included my version of the plan, embellish it, and add to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I've tried things like offering to pay it $50 if it does a good job, telling it off if it does a bad job. I think when you upload your own plan, you have to make sure it doesn't please you. You say, here's a plan that somebody else suggested. What do you reckon? And you get decent, better, all that kind of stuff, So
Yeah, cool. I've not tried to bribe it yet. Okay, good one.
no, but I reckon it's worth a try.
Yeah, cool one. Damien, what are you going to do? You've
Um,
already got a plan, so my suggestion is you just look at the plan.
Yeah, I will start
What we've done in
looking
the
at
course,
AI,
what
Russ.
we want to change.
I
Yeah.
will start using AI, but I'm doing sort of a separate one-page plan, which is around, sales growth and also productivity growth. So I'm looking at a lot of internal data to look at what my productivity levels were, what revenue I've grown. I've set like those targets, but then I guess it's some like the action plan. You could run a lot of that stuff through AI, which I haven't done.
Yep.
Just to maybe have some to develop a few more action items that I might not have thought of that because I'm just thinking about the obvious things that I would do, but there's probably some out of the box ideas that could contribute, right? So
Yeah. As I was saying before, I used it the other day, anonymized some client data. We uploaded it around capacity planning in manufacturing. It did an excellent job of working on. We got 3 different lines we want to optimize productivity out of, and it did a fantastic job for that. Honestly, it took me 30 seconds. I wrote the poorest quality prompt, and the results it came back with were quite exceptional. But it did lie, right? It did make up something in the middle that wasn't part of what we did. And it came up with a negative a negative day's worked, which I thought was interesting to balance things out. And I said, you can't do that. You've got to do this. I went, oh yeah, okay, good point. And so, but yeah, let's say it took me 15 minutes, but all up to get a really powerful analysis out of it that we've then used to go off and build some models within that business. So yeah, exciting stuff. Russell, for you?
I think what Justin said, like, if you just start with a manual and then sort of get that all out on paper and then sort of have a look at AI.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then sort of then stick to those points that you really want to stick to. Don't let it.
Yeah.
It's good to get those ideas, but you don't want to get dragging you to somewhere that's just going to waste your time.
Yeah, yeah. And as I was saying, that's what I do. I definitely make some notes on, if I'm doing a plan for somebody or someone or working with them on the plan, I'll make out some notes, which I would normally do. I call it a straw man plan. I'd make that really quickly, but then I would check it with AI to see if it had any better ideas. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And literally, I just make notes, take a photo of it, upload it. It reads my handwriting. I don't know how it does that. That's probably the most amazing part of AI, that it reads my handwriting. But yeah, it's actually pretty good. Cool. All right then. Just mindful of the time. So I guess next steps, for me, is the journal. So just make sure you've got your journal happening and you're using that. If you're interested, I've got an AI for Business webinar series I'm going to start up at the end of the month. And I haven't put it down here, but I'm also going to run another learning sprint February, March next year. I haven't quite got the timing sorted yet, but on time and priority management, which is going to be around, driving, the sort of stuff I put into these books around focus, discipline, control, time blocking, must, should, could, all that sort of stuff, how to eliminate time wasters, email, meetings, all that sort of stuff, interruptions, how do we deal with all that? And it links into the 90-day planner, which is the daily execution of that. So I'm going to run that early next year. The other piece then is the AI prompt libraries, and I'll send you a copy of that, Russell. I'm happy to do that. But and I think Damien and probably Just have already got copies of it. But and I'm just finding all they are is a really just a useful resource when you're a bit stuck with what to ask it, to open up the chapter that's on marketing or productivity or whatever it is and go, is there anything there that's going to stimulate my thought process? Then I plug it into Jeff Sue's 6-step model. That's the way I do it. I find it quite useful. So I have them open as shut them down because I'm on a webinar, but I have the Kindle version, which is the electronic version. I have it open because it's got a live table of contents in it. So I just click on the table of contents and it takes me to the page, and then I go to it. So I use the Kindle version for that. So yeah, it's good. All right. So that brings us to the end of the program, guys. So thank you very much for playing well, for participating, and I've quite enjoyed it actually. So I'm keen to do a few more of these down the track. And I will ask you for some feedback. So I'll send you a survey to do for me, so I can refine the process and make it better. And if you've got any positive things to say, then I wouldn't mind using that at some of the marketing for future learning sprints going forward. But like always, if you've got any questions, anything you want to run by me, you want to build your plan out and send me a copy of it, please do it. If you've already got a plan, Damien, and you're just going to modify it and add to it, so take that existing Damien plan and modify it and add to it, that's cool, and we'll talk about that in another session. But if I can help you in any way, just let me know, right? More than happy to help you out. All right. Any closing comments, I guess, before we go? What's the number one takeaway been from you from this whole program?
Hard to pick one, Russ, because I think there's a couple. I really like the sprint idea, and leveraging those mind shot resources along that sort of line. From the leadership perspective, I think it's just there's lots of little bits for 5, 10, 20% improvements all along the way in lots and lots of different areas. So just having a really good opportunity to focus on that's been terrific.
Yeah, cool. Nice one. What about you, Russ?
Just really putting it all together. Like, as I say, I'm new to this, so it's just been, brilliant. Just do the whole course, and then sort of now I've got to go the next step and break it down and actually start putting it into action. I know a few other people who do a lot of courses, and that's all they seem to do is course after course after course, and you don't see much on it. So
and I get that. I used to be a bit of a junkie, a bit of a training junkie, and I was spending way too much money on training every year, and I wasn't implementing any of it. So I have a policy now. If I'm going to do training, then I want to implement it, which has worked really well for me. I won't. I'm sorry. I'm just before I get to you, Damien. I've just tried to upload the prompt into the chat thing, but it's 1,000 characters, so it'll limit, and it's going to take me forever to put it in. So I'll actually send it in an email to you. It'll be easier. Okay, cool. Damien, what's the big takeaway been for you, mate?
I think it's just really about, it's given the whole course and the whole sprint, it's given me a good framework to actually put stuff in that I can implement in my day-to-day life, to actually make myself more productive, make my life better, really. And a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in leadership, it transcends just business, the philosophies that goes into your personal life as well, right? So all those things all interact in some level of harmony to give you some sort of, overall sort of leadership plan. So I think it's easy to sometimes think about it just in terms of your business, but it's how you lead your family, how you lead, like all the aspects of your life that you apply the same consistency.
Yeah, good. I agree totally. That's one of the reasons why I forced it to give you a life balance strategy in that plan, because I think it's too easy to get caught up in work, and it's all about work. But you've got to balance that with family, spiritual, all those things that we talk about in that life balance diagnostic. You've got to get that balance right to be really productive. Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, we might leave it there. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your support. And if I can help you out with anything along the way, any questions, anything you want to do, please just get in touch. But have a great weekend, and we'll talk again soon. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Russ.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Russ. Cheers, mate.
Bye.